Good evening and welcome to today's event, In the Hour of War, an evening of Ukrainian poetry and culture with Ilya Kaminsky, Yuliya Musakovska, and Olena Jennings. We're delighted to have all you join us at the Stavros Niarchos Foundation Library. My name is Eli Weitzman, and I'm a librarian at this branch, World Languages Collection, and I'll be your host this evening. Before I introduce tonight's participants, I would like to thank the Stavros Niarchos Foundation for making programs like this possible. I would also like to remind everyone that if you don't already have a library card, it is easy to get one by speaking with my colleague just outside of this room after the program, or visiting any information desk in our building or any branch of our large library system. I would also like to encourage everyone to visit New York Public Library's website and take a look at other upcoming programs at this branch. We have many offerings, including author talks, writing workshops, music, dance, and more. We would love to have you join us at the Stavros Niarchos Foundation Library again, and many times over. Now, finally, as many of you might have heard, the upcoming New York City budget includes a proposed $58 million cut to our funding for the city's libraries. This cuts will force us to curtail hours and even the number of days we are open. That means fewer programs and services our communities rely on. Libraries make New York City stronger, and at a time when public libraries across the country are under threat, we need to make sure we are investing in them here in New York. That's why we ask you to stand by your library and sign an online letter at investinlibraries.org or outside the room at our check-in table when tonight's program has ended. So it is now my pleasure to introduce Maria Genkin, without whom this event would have not been possible. Born and raised in Lviv, Maria has moved to the United States to attend the university. Maria started a professional career at Goldman Sachs, where she worked in project and program management for the investment banking division and qualified for the CFA. After her son, Aaron, was born in 2004, she left Goldman Sachs and pursued a variety of projects in education and culture, serving on several boards and volunteering before joining Razom as a board member in 2020. Maria is also a voracious reader. She initiated Razom Literature Project and regularly moderates literary events. So without further ado, I would like to welcome Maria and all participants to the stage.
My name is Maria Genkin, and I'm a board member of Razom for Ukraine. Razom is actually an organization that has deployed over 130 million to Ukrainian humanitarian aid since the beginning of the full-scale invasion. We have recently been named to Time 100 Influencers in Health. We've done many other projects, in advocating for help to Ukraine and in Washington, and we supported civil society in Ukraine. But we're also very passionate about amplifying Ukrainian voices in the United States. And today we're amplifying the voices of the poets that we're very privileged to do. And of course, our gratitude goes out to the whole team of Stavros Niarchos Foundation Library who made this possible. This is our second event, and I hope some of you attended the last event, and I hope to see you again here in the future for these events to become more regular. I'm joined on the stage by three amazing poets. They will read from two poetry collections that are available for sale. The poetry collections are published by the same publisher, Arrowsmith Press in Massachusetts, but they're also connected in other ways. For example, Olena Jennings is a translator of Ukrainian poets in the Anthology collection that Ilya has put together, but she is also a co-translator of Yuliya Musakovska's collection. So today, they're gonna be reading both their poetry and the poetry they've translated. And we have some other translators here with us today in the audience, and that's really amazing. We weren't able, obviously, to read every poet that is available in the anthology. So let me introduce Yuliya first. Yuliya Musakovska is an award-winning Ukrainian poet that continues to live in Lviv, Ukraine. She's the author of 5 poetry collections and the 6th one that's going to be available in Ukraine imminently. The collection that she will be reading from today was published in Ukraine in 2021, which means that it was written prior to the full-scale invasion. But it is still very much about the war, because, as you know, the war started in 2014 and not in 2022. Her poems have been translated into over 30 languages. She's fluent in English and Swedish, which I find fascinating. And she has been translating poetry both from Swedish into Ukrainian and into Ukrainian to those languages. And in particular, she translates Thomas Tranströmer from Swedish to Ukrainian. And she's going to be joined by Olena Jennings, very famous in New York for contributing a lot to bringing Ukrainian poetry to the United States. Olena is a New York-based writer, poet, and translator. And in addition to that, she's going to be reading, in addition to Yulia's poems, she's going to be reading translations of Kateryna Kalytko and Iryna Shuvalova today. Olena is also the founder and curator of the Poets of Queens reading series and press. And before we hear poetry, I want to ask a question of Yuliya about her collection. And the theme of this collection of Yuliya is freedom. The name is The God of Freedom, and everything in the collection kind of touches on the various ways the freedom can be interpreted. And in Razum for Ukraine, we've actually done a research on what resonates the most with American public as far as Ukraine is concerned. And we found out that actually freedom and the desire for freedom resonates the most, because Americans really see freedom as a very American value. So when they hear, that Ukrainians are seeking freedom, they understand it. So, Yuliya, I want to ask you about this concept, how this, what themes you're going to read about today, because in your collection you go from personal understanding of freedom to a more political one. And also if you see the freedom as a universal value, or is there something special about the way Ukrainians understand freedom?
Good evening. Thank you, Maria. This book actually explores freedom as some kind of divine force that lives in every human being. And in situations when this freedom is being challenged, then it also transforms a person. It may transform him or her in situations like when a child is being brought up and there's too much control by the parents. It can be challenged in a personal freedom can be challenged in a relationship when there is a desire for self-fulfillment and independence. It can be when a person is going through a sickness and is confined to a hospital, and of course it is influencing the entire lifestyle and the freedom. And of course this grand situation, which is quite familiar and relevant for us in Ukraine, when the country's freedom and independence is being threatened by an aggressor. In fact, well, the desire of freedom is, of course, one of the inherent traits for Ukrainians, and I mean, we can say it's coming from the Cossack period, but of course, many generations of Ukrainians were longing for country's independence, and they have paid paid a high price for that. Many people have paid a high price, and they had been working hard for it to happen. That is why we value this so much, and that is why this fight is crucial. I actually think that this spirit of freedom lives in every human being, and this is also explored in the collection. It is, in fact, a universal value, and I would say it is a meta value, as a historian Timothy Snyder calls it.
Thank you very much. So let's invite you to the podium with Olena and to hear some of your poems.
Якби їхня спільна історія так і не почалася, кожен зостався б сам на сам зі своєю війною. Серпень, пекельна тілами напхана лазня. Вона стискає знайому долоню і оживає знову. Усе, що сталося і не сталося з ними, задавнене, прикладене каменем, незабуте, проступає візерунком на шкірі, снивом, збовтаним із реальністю, перешкоджає бути тут і тепер собою, дихати на повні груди. Листя починає жовтіти, він жартує невміло, так і не встигнемо напитися цієї отрути, пахощів літніх ринків, сонячного свавілля, дотиків плечей і колін, оголених та засмаглих, світла, що білою цівкою пробивається крізь біль, відчуття, ніби це єдина мить, яку ти матимеш, аби закінчити речення, стиснути міцніш обійми. Чорна тінь відділяється і залишається на узбіччі. Крики придушені стануть круками, розкришаться угорі. Якщо захочеш розповісти мені, у чому річ, я слухатиму. Тому прошу тебе, говори.
The August story. If their history together hadn't begun this way, they both would have been left alone, each with their war. August, hellish, the bathhouse filled with bodies. She squeezes the familiar hand and comes to life again. Everything that has happened and didn't happen to them is established, set in stone, unforgettable, a pattern that appears on skin, in dreams, mixed with reality. It interferes with being your true self. In the here and now, with taking a full breath of air. The leaves have begun to yellow. He jokes awkwardly. We won't have the chance to drink in this poison. The sense of summer markets, exploits made in the sun. The touch of shoulders and knees, bare and tanned. The light that in a thin white beam breaks through pain. The feeling that this is the only moment that you'll have to finish a sentence, to embrace more tightly. A black shadow separates and lies on the roadside. The suppressed cries will become crows that crumble in the sky. If you decide to tell me what is going on, I'll listen. So I beg you, explain. Next, I'll read a poem called Fear of Flying in Ukrainian. Того вечора він видобув птаха у тебе з горла. Спершу з'явився дзьоб, соняшникова насінина, чубата голівка, ніби в короні. Тоді пелехата шейка, крила, притиснуті міцно до тулуба, а раптом їх не помітять. Помітять, а може що і не злетить. А як злетить, то хіба при землі. Птах стріпується, вистрелює, мов куля, зникає.
Fear of flying. That evening, he pulled a bird from your throat. First, a beak appeared, a sunflower seed, a crested head as if in a crown, then a feathery neck, wings pressed against its body, perhaps unnoticed. Noticed, maybe it won't try to fly. And if it does, maybe just close to the ground. The bird spreads its wings, shoots like a bullet, disappears. The vow. Do you take this man with his extreme sense of justice, with his broken sleep, his dual nature, one of his faces an oasis, and the other a sandstorm, with wrinkles scattered around his eyes when he smiles, with his head full of complex numbers, causal connections, details of precise accuracy? Do you take this man to be quiet with him more often than talk, this silence being more valuable than any conversation? Do you take this man to be quiet with him more often than talk, this silence being more valuable than any conversation? Do you take this man to burst into all-night diners, to peel an apple and touch a delicate vinyl record with 2 hands and 2 hands, to wrap your legs around him as if around a tree trunk, to part as butter beneath a knife, to revolve around your axis, lighting his way? Do you promise to insert and take out needles, to rip off and put on bandages, to smooth over conflicts, to not pour too much milk into his coffee, to withstand unbearably long pauses when he turns his back, to kiss as greedily as if choking on water on a hot day? Do you take this woman with her maladjusted mechanics, concealed scars, with her collection of hearts in the pockets of her dress, with her pile of errands that never get smaller, with her dyslexia, holes in her memory, her bitten lip, with her big purse that holds random items and a lot of freedom? Do you take this woman without reading her poems, without reprimanding her, to get angry with her but chase her fears away, to revel in the faults that her perfection is made of, to preserve your day's plan when you're together? Do you promise to tiptoe around when she's bringing her ideas to life, to come as a peacemaker to her hot spots, to stray from the right path with her, to enter into arguments and philosophical disputes, while never stopping to grow into each other? In a rented Soviet-era apartment and on a crowded local train and in the attic of your parents' house and in your own home with large windows and white walls, and in a hospital, ward filled with desperation and hope, and in a hotel room where the sea replaces the floor, until nothing do you part. Hatching. The Night of Eggshells, my unmistakable copy, in a modern remix, processed by time and space. Where did you get so much courage, moving nonstop along this stunning journey towards adulthood? The green pea curls biting into the fence, getting angry, bending old and creaky weeds. Who would dare trim you with the "you cannot" scissors, or straighten you up with the "you must" planks? The flag bearer of an autumn park, the golden imposter. Look, fallen leaves are exploding in strikes above our heads. Your house of sticks is standing strong, will not fall apart. If you want to cry, then cry. Time will come to be a warrior. You pierce right through with your eyes full of horizon. The night approaches, so only the closest ones remain near. The shell breaks, somewhere in the zone of twilight. Basilisks hatch. The face changes in the mirror. Ave November. As you come closer, November, clover breaks free from beneath the dry leaves. The sunlight blinds our eyes and we don't see anything anymore. Not the graying of the fruit trees, not the path along the river scattered with bones. Not the desperate inscriptions on the centuries-old walls of the lion's den. We gave our eyes over to the sun for sparkling rattles and overripe fruit, sweet juice that runs down the chin, the caresses of fiery foxes. I found the shell of a chestnut in my pocket of my khaki-colored jacket. It pricked me and I regained sight. Those who are about to die salute you, November. So this is seemingly a nature poem, but it's about the indifference of the world. The next one is fear. Fear that encircles your throat with an iron hoop does not define you. Fear that pierces the chest with a red-hot rod, brands both cheeks, does not define you. Fear is like the typhus that father brought home from the war, and before his death spread it to all his children. Fear is like the hair that grows out after you shave your head, not curly anymore. Fear is like a language that they forced you to speak, feeding you with moldy bread and spoiled meat, pieces of earth fertilized with bone meal. Fear is like a stranger who approaches you spraying spit. Fear is like a torn latex glove, a protective mask which fell off your face in a crowd. Fear is safety which devours freedom with a tidy mouth. Don't ask what fear can do to you, ask what you can do to fear, so that it doesn't define you. It's one of the poems written in the pandemic period, and now it also takes on a different meaning as many poems written earlier, including those in my book. So the next one is Garden of Bones. What's rattling in the sack? Bones. My bones, but not all of them. My brother stole 3 bones. He sold 2 of them at the market and buried 1 in his garden. An apple tree will grow from that bone. Each apple with my face will speak to my brother. Why did you do this, older brother? What did you kill me for? Taking the bones from my body, sewing it shut with a coarse thread, put me into a sack, not letting them bury me for 3 days. It is because your wife is prettier, your song is louder, your soil is richer. The apple tree in your garden is taller. Give me your wife, your land, tie your song in a knot in your throat. You're not a brother to me, not an honest enemy, not a man, not a beast, a sack full of bones. Your wife will come outside and take a bite of an apple. She will fall dead. Your children will come out. They will take a bite and fall lifeless. The sun will rise and burn your house to the ground, sowing the land with ashes. What's rattling in the sack? Apples. So very sweet. So this is a poem I usually read to illustrate this fake narrative of the Brotherhood of Nations that Russia has been using, of course, as a pretext for colonization of the neighboring countries. And the addressing of a brother is, of course, sarcastic. Okay, and this will be it for tonight. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Yulia. I know we actually have very limited time here. We only have another half an hour, and I'm as much I'm saddened to cut Yulia off. I know there's one poem that's very important, but that's why you have to buy a collection and actually read some of those other wonderful poems that we're not able to read today. And now we want to introduce the second collection in the Hour of War. And actually, some of the poems you've heard today from Yulia are also in the collection, so they really do speak to each other, those 2 books. Ilya Kaminsky is one of the co-editors of this collection, and of course many of you know Ilya. He was born in Odessa, so he's very much an American-Ukrainian poet as well. He now lives in the States, and of course he has 2 poetry collections, Dancing in Odessa and The Deaf Republic. And The Deaf Republic, I think, was on every single best poetry list in the year that it came out in 2019. Ilya right now is a professor at Princeton University, but what I especially want to talk about today is that he actually co-founded a program in Odessa that supports young poets and some very young poets. You know, some looked at pictures. Some look like maybe they're 4 years old, 5 years old, like really young poets. And it's a wonderful organization that Ilya is asking everyone to support, and we are supporting it by this event too, which actually produces a lot of poetry because the kids, you know, that gives them voice to speak about something when they sit in the bomb shelters in Odessa. So we're all here kind of thinking about them today as well. So in 2023, together with Caroline Forchet, he edited a collection of poetry from Ukraine in the Hour of War. And this volume is very slim, but it has some of the best Ukrainian poets. Actually, in addition to Yulia, there are poets that are nominated for Griffin Prize. I don't know, those of you that follow poetry certainly know it's the largest poetry prize in the world. Natalka Bilocerkivets was nominated before, and Halina Kruk is nominated this year, and they're both in the collection. But yeah, I was surprised to actually see some of the poems in the collection are not recent, right? Because you would expect in the Hour of War all the poems to come after the invasion, but some of them came after 2014, but some are actually much older, like 30 years old. I've seen one of the poems performed by a poet in 1994, I think, you know, Viktor Neborak. So I was delightful to see it here, but I'm wondering how you made the selection for the anthology and what was your thought?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. First of all, thank you for what you do. Razom truly is a lifeline for great many people in Ukraine. I have met people in Ukraine after the war started who told me that Razom was a lifeline for them. So thank you.
Thank you.
There are many answers to your question. Some of those answers will be about Ukrainian poetry, but others would be about United States. So I came to America in 1993. At that time, there was no anthology at all of post-World War II Ukrainian poetry. The first major anthology was Words for War. That was started by Oksana Maximchuk and her partner, which was probably the first really major. There were other books that got some attention, but no real leadership in that way. What does it tell about us in America that we need a major war to start reading poetry from another country? Now, to bridge from that to the selection of poems for the anthology, some of those poets would be impossible to avoid, say Oksana Zabushko, who is a major voice in Ukrainian literature, or Andryhovich, who is another major voice in Ukrainian literature. They're not necessarily writing poetry as much as they used to, but what struck me is that how recent these poems felt, how Zabushko's very passionate poetry of feminism is seen not as a different fight, but as a much deeper fight in this moment. Because one realizes how hard it wasn't just to be a feminist, but a feminist in Eastern Europe, and not just a feminist in Eastern Europe, but a feminist in Ukraine during the Soviet Union time. So these poems now, they don't just feel recent, they also feel deeper, because we, the readers, have changed. And this is just one example. Another example was Oleg Lushacha. We had a long conversation with Caroline about including him because he passed away before the full-scale invasion began. Why include him? Well, the very final reason why we decided we must include him is because a friend of mine in Kyiv, when Kyiv was truly bombed for weeks, people were hiding in subways, and a friend sent me a photo of Lushacha poem being passed around. Now, he is not a war poet. He is not a poet of crisis. He is a mystical poet. He is a poet of mystery, of nature. And people needed that. And we thought we must represent that too in the book. And that also coming back to that bridge of what does it tell us as American readers. Here in America, we love to see problems happen somewhere else. We watch them like a reality TV. In fact, when full-scale invasion began, a friend of mine, Lyudmila Khersonskaya, texted me saying, you guys are watching us like we are a reality TV. Those are her words, I'm quoting her. Because what happened is people in Ukraine were seeing American comments on Facebook about Ukrainians being bombed while Ukrainians were being bombed. How weird that whole situation is. Okay, so what does it tell us about ourselves? Here we expect to have poetry of crisis, poetry of witness. And when we say the word witness, we often mean doom, 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 horror, horror, horror. Well, guess what? People still fall in love in Ukraine. Okay, I was there in January. At night, the city was bombed. In the morning, I'm talking to my uncle. I'm saying, how are you? And he says, let's go for breakfast. And he's 8 years old. He got more energy than I do. Let's go for breakfast. And I'm like, wait, do we need to talk about what happened at night? He says, no. I'm like, what do you mean? He says, you know what we need to talk about? I'm like, what? The fact that some people have to go to work in the morning. What I'm trying to tell you is witness is not just a witness of horror. It's also a witness to how people survive. We must honor that survival. We must honor the fact that people in a subway hiding for weeks while the city is bombed pass around the poem about mystery. Think about that for a moment. So there are some love poems in the book as well.
Thank you so much. That's deepens my understanding of the anthology for sure. Ilya, I really want us to get to poetry, and I know we only have 20 minutes late, but if you can very quickly tell the story of the last poem that you told me about that you're going to read today.
Yeah.
And actually maybe in the time, Olena, if you can make it to the podium.
So the last poem,
Afanasieva, Anastasia Afanasieva's poem, the one that she wrote.
the last
The
You want me to-
Anastasia Afanasieva.
okay.
No, just tell the story of how she wrote it. because then you're gonna
The
read.
poet is Anastasia Afanasieva, who is a Russophone poet. She won a number of prizes from Russia. She's from the city of Kharkiv, which is very, very close to the Russian border. Before 10 years ago, before the full-scale invasion, when the actual war just started, when Crimea was stolen, she didn't know what to do, so she stopped writing entirely. She was a psychiatrist, and she said, I don't know how to deal with the mad world, so she became a fisherwoman. And for almost 8 years, that's what she was doing. Then the full-scale invasion began. Now, for those of you who don't know, if you live in the city of Kharkiv, the city is being bombed, that means that you have about 2 minutes from a moment the bomb is shot from Russia before it falls on Kharkiv. It's very, very close. So she actually had a friend on the border text her, fall to the floor. And she had 2 minutes to fall to the floor before bombardment happened. And she, her mother and the child that they have in the family were in the bomb shelter for weeks as well. And then they escaped it under bombardment. When they were escaping, she began to write poetry again. And she began this final poem in Russian. And as she was writing it, the bomb started again. And so she switched the poem to Ukrainian. And that gives you pretty much the whole geopolitical situation. The idea of language as a weapon, an idea of language as a means of defense, as an armor, in just one poem. What does it mean for a poet to refuse to write in their language?
So you'll have to wait for that poem, and I hope we have time. So Olena is going to read, and we're going to actually show the portraits of the poets just to make sure they're present here in the room with us, at least in that way. So the first poet is Kateryna Kalytko.
He writes, "They were disliked on earth and forsaken among the clouds. Yuri Andruchovich. Mother, you haven't sent me a single photograph, so I almost forgot what your face looks like. You'll cry, I know. I have caused you distress, but each trouble is just a tiny speck of blood on a Sunday dress. Life is a house on the side of the road, old world style, like our peasant house, divided into two parts. In one, they wash the dead man's body and weep. In the other, they dress a bride. Mother, I want you to have a dream in which I come and sit in the part with more light. You cry so much, Mother, you don't stop sobbing. I can't see your face well, but faces don't matter much. Your hair, I still remember, smells of cornflowers. They all want something from us and keep stirring. The anthill of the army, in which the country lies like a rotting fish. I wrote to Andrew a long, soulful letter, but didn't get a reply. Maybe I got the address wrong. And before that, Andrew wrote how he remembers the taste of the toffee that Dad used to bring from town, also the slippery ravine behind our house. Peter, he wrote, if we ever return, it will be on stretchers. Mother was right. We should have remained fishermen. Rain drums loudly. Mud covers the front lines. We march hopelessly along rivers and under the clouds. I'm forgetting everything, as if memories were leaking out of me. Mother, does that girl Hafia still sing in the church choir?
The next one is by Iryna Shuvalova.
Pray to the empty wells. Pray to the empty wells, to the breakwaters, to the apple orchards. String together bitter ash berries, sweet ash berries. Carry the luxurious fur of your ancestors on your shoulders. Cry, pretend to be grass. Be like an entrance and an exit. Be like water. Go in one ear and out the other. The moon rolls out like a clay platter. A big fish, a leviathan, comes from the sea. Show me what you have inside you. Pray to the great light, to the rooster perched on a post, to the blind stone and ice-cold water. Be like water. Be like a needle. Go into death's ear and out the other. You'll emerge a princess. Mare's head, the goddess of the bog. The dark day blindly blinks its eyes like glass beads. The year's youngest son is cross-eyed in one eye. Drizzle falls. In the elderberry brush are 3 ravens, and at the bottom of the river, 3 girls, and on the road, 3 happy friends. The first is a punk, the second a drunk, and the third just a nobody. The clay heart wanders down a path through reeds, beats. The cold river gasps for breath. The night embroiders the sky in small stitches. Wade deeper. Give the water your calves, knees, and thighs. Become a sparrow beneath a rain-soaked roof. Become a bullet that rides the frightening, fiery wind. Become a lock of hair. Get loose. Untangle yourself from the braid. Know the names of herbs, lovage, fern, chamomile. Carry a bagel in your pocket. Cry as much as you want and pray to the gods of the old pantry, to the gods of the attic and the mouse hole. Don't empty wash basins in the dark. Have a raw potato and bury it. All that was, all that will be, all that calms the heart, it's all yours. A royal bird hopo looks at you with an eye dark as blackthorn, round like August. Moss grows on the planks over the well, as much of the world as there is. It's all yours. a thimble and a half of rain, an endless pasture of heavens.
Thank you, Olena. And we should also mention that Olena is a poet. You've heard her translations today, but she's a poet, and her collection is available for sale today as well. So even though she's not reading from it, please support the poets and get that collection today, and she'll gladly sign it for you. Ilya is going to read the 4 poems at this point.
Friends, as you might have noticed, that I speak with a pretty heavy accent, so there will be some handouts being passed around. I don't know if you have enough, so if you don't mind making a friend and sharing a handout with the person sitting next to you. We all need friends, right? Okay, so while the handouts are being passed, let me tell you just a little bit about the first poet I'll be reading from. That is Lesyk Panasiuk, who is a poet from Bucha. Bucha is a tiny little town, a pretty well-to-do town next to Kiev. Some horrific things happened to Bucha during the Russian occupation. Once the city was liberated, Lesyk came back and she found things like explosive devices left in children's slippers. So this is some background of the poem. Another kind of background was for him and for some other poets. All the way back in 2014, I began doing interviews with poets from Ukraine. And poets said very interesting things about what is happening to their language. How do they observe language in a time of crisis, in a time of war? And a number of poets began to tell me things like, I no longer trust figurative language, I no longer trust metaphor. I'm like, okay, interesting. And then a year passed and I read their poems, and the poems are incredibly full of metaphor. The poems are incredibly full of figurative language. So what happened? I think at first, in crisis, the poets began to think, this is too pretty. I can't capture reality. And then their craft began to rise to the occasion. And some of the poems that I read are really quite moving as you will see, really quite powerful poems. And that is because they found a way to use figurative language to capture the occasion. And that is an amazing thing when craft is not there just for being pretty, but for translating the extremity through language for us. At this point, I think everybody got the handout, so I'll just read you the poem. It is by Lesyk Panasiuk, and it's co-translated with Katie Ferris. In the hospital rooms of my country. It's on page 2 of your handout. In the hospital rooms of my country. Letters of the alphabet go to war, clinging to one another, standing up, forming words no one wants to shout. Sentences that are blown up by the mines in the avenue, stories shelled by multiple rocket launches. A Ukrainian word is ambushed. Through the broken window of the letter D, other countries watch the letter I loses its head. How the roof of the letter M falls through the language in a time of war can't be understood. Inside the sentence is a hole. No one wants to die, no one speaks. By the hospital bed of the letter E lies a prosthesis it is too shy to use. You can see the light. There's a clumsily sewn up holes of the letter F. The soft signs in tongue turn out due to the disagreements regarding the etymology of torture. There is too much alphabet in the hospital rooms of my country, too much alphabet. No place to stick an apostrophe. Paint falls off the walls, showering us with the words incomprehensible, like man who in the wartime refuse to speak. And the poet's photo is, of course, right there on the wall. So the next poet I'll read from is on the page 7. This is Ostap Slyvynsky. We were talking about freedom a little bit earlier in this conversation, and Ostap is probably one of the most free people I have ever met. Some Ukrainians from Lviv are far more European than Europeans are. The culture is not lip service, it is a method of daily survival. And you can even see it in his photo, I think. So Ostap Slyvynsky, and he's in conversation with another poet here, whose work you have heard a moment ago, Kateryna Kalytko, the epigraph. It is easier now that the war has started, she wrote, as soon as the war has started. Kateryna Kalytko. Between Hate and Love by Ostap Slyvynsky. Between hate and love, once a forest covered, and houses, houses. No trees now, fire, fire, no buildings. Between love and hate, see us. We walk upright. Clarity is so instant that not everyone remembers to shut their eyes. Many lie down, blinded in the gardens and the outskirts. Those who remain see their lips as if by honey sealed, repeating words of love only and hate. Yeah, we are envoys of a flat earth. Our only vocabulary is antonyms. Those who wait for nuances from us, those who arrive here to click color photos, forgive us. Your efforts will go waste. As all our gathering of stones, our public panels at the low table lit by the light of the stage, forgive us. Here is our X-ray, skeletons, a skin, figure nothing else at the moment. Ostap Slyvynsky. So, and finally, the last poet I'll read is Anastasia Afanasieva. And we already spoke about the poet. This is a poet who literally switched to Ukrainian in the middle of the poem.
And I should add that I was looking for her photograph, but a lot of her photographs are with carps that are that big, because that's what she does right now.
Yeah. She was a psychiatrist before, but she prefers fish now because humans bomb other humans. A new song of silence. Anastasia Afanasieva. It was evening. When we left, it was evening. And the snow fell into a time where a Russian ship drowned and ducks were tossed at us. We weren't here, sword soldiers. We ran, and behind us memories stood. Among the bombed out grocery stores and streets which still had our faces. We were the last from the bomb shelter, who dared to jump into the car, cats, ducks, mothers, a snake wrapped into a wool blanket. We were the last who stopped, listening to the whistle of bombs, stopped, falling to the floor with prayers and a torn lip. In the half second when the bomb was already dropped but didn't reach the target, the first who stopped memorizing the noises of airplanes, distinguishing the sound of missiles from that of a bomb, between the sound of a shattered teacup and the tune of an iron wing. The difference between quiet and the waiting. It is evening. When my story stops, we are the last from our bomb shelter. We did not stay to listen to explosions of the air selves and drove where the quiet still breathes. With our days in a backpack, we drove while listening to the mechanical motion of our ideas, to the sound of blood in our veins, the sound of blood across our planet's memory, the sound of that which we still call our day. Tick-tock, tick-tock, tick-tock. With every step of time, with every drop of the earth cleanses memory, cleanses our need to live on. And we're building a barricade inside our lungs from the enemy's language, which now stained with the drops of blood, language зарasta ляпана нашей кровью, which drops of our blood. Now our hatred is deeper than the bowls of the earth. We are forgetting the language in which we wrote our poems. I'm glad to forget, yes, рада забыть эту мову, that language in which была написана все мои верши, in which I wrote all my poems. Goodbye, mutant bear, fascist with Soviet smile, and spying in the form of a letter Z. Now you're alone, ты теперь сам, на сам и с собою. Eat your own tail. Thieves and executioners' language will be chased to your lair. And if you eat them up, a song will be heard, the new song of quiet, which at what cost to our hands? I won't say it loud, this cost. I am writing, and all my people are waiting. Thank you.
Thank you, Ilya, and thank you, everyone. And we have 1 minute for one question. So if there is somebody that really... Is there anybody who wants to ask a question? Or we can just go and buy the books and ask the questions individually, when you sign your books. And anybody with a pressing question? No? Okay, great. So thank you very much, everyone, for coming. And of course, thank you, the library, yet again, for organizing the second wonderful Ukrainian event. We can't be more grateful. And thank you guys for reading Ukrainian and for coming to these events. They're very important for Ukraine and for the poets there that cannot, unfortunately, leave and come here. Thank you.